Welcome to Global Risk Community Chat. Today, our guest is Richard Fu. I'm very happy to have you here today, Richard. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Nice to meet you, and great to get in touch with the global risk community.
Likewise, thank you for joining us today and sharing your expertise. So before we get into the topic, can you briefly introduce yourself to the audience?
First of all, I've been working in the commodity sector for about 30 years. First 10 years in the agricultural sector, and the recent 20 years in the energy and metals. First part was mainly in the physical trading plus hedging. The second part mostly in the financial market trading. And currently, I'm heading a commodity department for SPDB Bank London.
Sounds good. A lot of expertise are here as well. So with that being said, then let's jump right into the topic. What will you be sharing with us today?
Now everybody is talking about the market movement, volatility, and potentially the risk. I think we need to keep the big picture in mind as always, so that we don't lose track or be deviated by the noises people call it.
Yeah, sounds good.
So I would go through the topics from like a top-down approach, go through the great rebalancing, resetting, ESG, geopolitical, and lastly but not least, the hedging risk.
Yes, sounds good. So with that being said, then let's get into it more in depth. So what are some key things about this topic? And I, of course, hear the things you will be going through. So let's get into it.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, I think starting from the market today, everybody can see the market dropped a lot in the past weeks. People worry about a recession, but my personal opinion is I think the recession risk is very low because this round of market run, bull run or global economy growth just started from 2020. 2020 was a sad year. It's not good for most people, most businesses. It ruthlessly wiped out businesses who are still struggling and try to survive. But the pandemic quickly ruthlessly wiped them out, and the money flows to the new sector. Where are the new sector? The EVs, the renewables. I think this is just the start of the new cycle. It could last years and maybe decades.
Yes. And then let's get into more with it. Why do you think, like I hear that, of course, you don't think the same as the most of the other experts. So how?
I think, first of all, I think if you look into the history, the global economy has been growing on the global basis, on the globalization basis since the Second World War. So it's been for many years. In the past 30 or 40 years, is mostly boomed about Chinese economy booming, plus amid the globalization background. Now it seems the pandemic's changing the course. People are talking about globalization to localization. Nobody knows whether it will materialize, but there is a risk. But most importantly, like what we just mentioned earlier, it's recession risk. Why I think it's small, because this economy boom just started in 2020. That's one. Number two is the market rout is mainly caused by the high inflation, tightening by the Fed. But I don't think the tightening would be the solution for the global economy to cool down or calm down the inflation, because it's more of the supply chain issue. The supply couldn't catch up. The producing countries was still struggling in the pandemic. They couldn't supply them the products the Western need. You can see the booming demand in the street in Europe and the US. People are spending the huge savings saved during the pandemic. So I think it's different from other correction in the past. That's why I think this correction is highly possibly just a correction. And if you are monitoring the market movement closely, this could be the minimum similar to that in 2020, when the market collapsed and rallied and bounced back very sharply, but also on a smaller scale. So that's my view on the current market, and also the global economy in the next years or decades. I'm still positive in the overall growth. Why is that? Because this cycle is different from other cycles. The past economic cycles has always been based on the same fossil fuel energy. The fossil fuel energy industry has been the cornerstone and foundation of the global economy in past 100 years. But this time around, this function itself is changing. It's changing to renewables. So that's a big twist and big difference from the cycles in the past. That will cause the burgeoning demand of metals, who are mostly used in the ESG change, renewables, and tightening the supply, because the production criteria, cost is getting higher because of ESG requirement. You have to, stop polluting the world to produce the same quality or higher quality of metals. And on the energy side, because everybody is phasing out the fossil fuel energy and changing to renewables, but it's not done overnight. It takes time. So the new renewables is not big enough to power the world yet, but the investment in the fossil fuel industry has been, reduced greatly, if not stopped. And this is not a one-time change. It's the short-term change. It's a big change. It's not an economic event. It's not a political event. Now it's even a cultural and mentality event. You might have heard a report that a leading UK crude oil company has been investing heavily to expand into renewables in the past years. When they tried to recruit in the top university in the UK, the students who sent out the letters were told off by others. They were challenged, say, what are you doing? Are you supporting a fossil fuel company who are polluting the world? So you can see what's, the changes in the people's mentality, which most important, the younger generation. They are the people who would manage more and more money and do more and more business than the current generations. So I think that's why this trend is just started and would last for years.
Yeah.
So that's a big picture on the ESG and global resetting level.
Yes. Thank you for, first of all, clarifying the first part that I've asked, and secondly, getting into this, I think, very important topic also, not only, I think, for the industry itself, but it affects the general population as well. So I think it's a very crucial topic and for our audience. And with that being said, can you share some takeaway points for our viewers? And because, of course, there is this big change happening, a mentality change, as you said. So maybe can you share some takeaways that they can, start thinking about taking action on, maybe implementing on?
I think the most imminent things people or corporate or business are doing now is to review their ESG exposure. They have to stop or shun out of the traditional polluting industries. For example, you might have heard several mine owners that they are struggling or working hard to dispose their coal mines. That's a very good example. Although in India and China, most of the power is still from coal. So you can see the twist in the global economy and the industries. Yeah. If you review your ESG procedure, it could cost you more money to review it in the future, because that can only get tighter and tighter. Carbon emission allowance, you have to buy it, you have to work and pollute within the allowed limit in the transition period.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that as well. With that being said, I just have one last question remaining. Could you shortly maybe explain or express what your experience with being part of the risk community in general, your observations?
My observation is number one, the geopolitical risk. Now, apparently, what's happening in Ukraine and in other parts of the world is not good for the current supply chain. So a lot of raw materials and finished products, the supply chain are infected and has to be modified, and the risk has to be mitigated if you are in the relevant stages of the supply chain, including the wheat, including the oil or gas, some metals. So this all very practical risk control points. We need to find a mitigations method. If we couldn't, we still have to be aware of such risk instead of running the risk without any measures. That's one thing. Another possibility supply chain is, we all heard about the argument, this decoupling between the largest economy and second largest economy. It's very difficult. Hopefully they can sort it out in a good way. Everybody would benefit. If not, I think the global supply chain has to be reassessed to a very large extent, because the second largest economy, China is the largest producer in the world. So where would you source products? Of course, you can try other countries, but as to the scale and capital investment and the skilled labor, nobody can compete with China. That's for sure. So the supply chain face big challenges. In the past decades, there's no such doubts, questions in supply chain management. Everybody knows where to buy your products, where to sell your product. But now it's a challenge. It's a real challenge for the supply chain professional. That's one thing I'd like to mention. The other one is hedging risk. Traditionally, the hedgers have physicals and hedge in the futures market. And when the futures market drop off, they can close their futures position. But now things are changing. Energy market are changing greatly. Metals market are changing greatly. So the price jumped up, may dropped off, may not. Look at what happened in the oil market. I guess a lot of people started to hedge when oil price reached $70, $80, $90, even $100. But nowadays, after topping highs, it's still about $100. Will it change in the near future? I really doubt that, because the energy transition will support the crude oil price. So what do the hedgers do? That's a big challenge. And I never heard report that central banks, regulators started to look into this commodity hedging cash requirement. It tells you how challenged it is right now. Take another commodity example, nickel. Hedgers started to sell nickel at 20,000, 50,000, it's 50,000, 10,000. So what do? So as market is changed, the world is changed, you have to take a new view.
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing that as well. And with that being said, our time unfortunately has run out for today. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. I think it was a very important topic as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good day. Thank you.
You too.
Thank you. Bye-bye.